as we continue to make sense of the various aspects of this year's local government election. And among the issues that have raised a lot of concern is the fact that many young people in this country did not bother to cast their ballots or even to register to participate in this year's local government elections. Many are facing historic unemployment levels in the country, and on the eve of the elections, thousands of youth in this country took to social media stating reasons why they had no intention to cast their ballots to begin with. The hashtag was "I want to vote, but." For more on this then and the other reasons why young people in this country showed very little interest compared to older South Africans in the election, let's bring in political commentator Tessa Dooms. Tessa, always great to speak to you. Welcome to this special edition of News at Prime. What have you been, let me rephrase that question. How have you been making sense of young people in this country seemingly not being interested or wanting to take part in the election? Is it apathy or way more?
Yeah, I mean, that for me, Tembi, has not been a shock of this election. That has been a steady trend over the last 3 or 4 local and national elections, where we've seen young people not show up to register, not show up to vote. What we traditionally call voter apathy or youth political apathy, I think is a misguided view, and I think it's lazy in a few senses. One is that young people in this country have over time shown that they are interested in politics. If we think just about what happens on campuses with student politics at TVET level, where people are fighting for housing and they're fighting for tuition fees, when we think about universities, but even when we think about what happens at protests in communities and at community level, it is not old people who are the ones who are able to mobilize, and it's not old people being mobilized. It's young people. It's young people who are engaged in community work and community efforts. So it is not apathy to what happens in South Africa or the plight of South Africa or even politics itself. It is a mistrust in the political system and the power of the vote. And it is a mistrust in political parties and not believing that political parties are going to deliver on the things that they promise. And I think that what we're seeing is a broad, really a turning away of the electorate from political parties and the system, saying to them that you need to bring more to the table if you want our vote. Our vote is not guaranteed. Yes, people fought and died for this vote, but it's because the vote is precious that we're not just going to throw it away callously. We're going to wait for a good reason to give our vote to someone.
Tessa, if there is this, as you say, mistrust in the vote, the power of the vote essentially appearing to lose that strength among young people in this country, what does that mean then for a country where the youth is the majority and where there is clearly a need for improvement and some would argue change even at the highest level of politics? Do we need to rework the way in which we conduct election of politicians?
I mean, specific to young people, I think we need to take a real look at the way we engage with young people in this country, both at the political and economic level. We are treating young people as kind of beneficiaries, these people who need our help in order to make it in the world. And we're not seeing young people and the contributions that they can make. We're not seeing them as partners in our society. We're not treating them as leaders in our society. If we truly believe that every generation has a generational mission, why is it that we're not looking at young people and the various forms of young people and the various generations of young people, to put it that way, and saying what is it that we can work with you on rather than just promise you in a very passive way? And I think that's one part of the story that would ultimately change politics in this country, when young people feel like they're taken seriously and not just lured with parties, songs, and dances. But the other part of it is really to rethink what we mean by politics in this country and the political system. And also the link between the vote and everything else. Because, like I said earlier, young people are doing other things. They are engaged in other ways as active citizens, but that link between those other things and the vote is missing. People want to know what happens after the vote. How do I take the vote and make it meaningful and effective afterwards by way of accountability? How do I remove someone from that seat that I put them in the ward or in the council if I'm not happy with them? And the answer to that, unfortunately, is through political parties who more often than not are saying, unless you can show me your party membership, I'm not willing to deal with you the day after the vote. And we need a change in political culture that says your vote is meaningful in your hands on the day of the vote and many times after the vote.
So what then are the implications of the legitimacy of either councils at city level, and ultimately, as we march towards 2024, the national governments that will be elected going forward in South Africa if this trend continues?
If this trend continues, what governments are going to be faced with is a lot more opposition, a lot more people pushing back at them, and a lot more people that are circumventing the systems that are and creating their own parallel ways of self-governance. And we don't want a fragmented society. We want a society that's going to grow and evolve and change in unison. And if young people are not drawn into the existing political party or political system, whether it's through parties or through other mechanisms, we're going to start creating very parallel processes where we're going to see more people go to the streets. We're going to see more people resist and push back in ways that may not lead to the kinds of consequences that we want in the short run. But people are going to demand more. They're going to ask for more. And we don't want to get to a situation, and I think people's eyes kind of popped open yesterday when we were talking about 30% voter turnout, but we don't want to get to a situation where the entire process of voting is meaningless because we have chosen to ignore young people, leave them behind, and make it their fault.
Very quickly, Tessa, there has been some blame put at the foot of the IEC for this low turnout this year. Is that fair?
I think there's some level to which it's very fair. And this is not about discrediting the IEC. I've said this a few times in the last few days, because the IEC is our IEC. We all collectively own that institution, and it has to be a public good that we all treasure and that we want to see run effectively. So it's important for us to say when we see things that are not working in the IEC. I think the short runway, 42 days to plan this election, has a lot to do with the glitches that we've seen. I think there are situations that are being treated like they're anecdotal. But even if they're anecdotal, people need to know that the IEC is taking those seriously, is being transparent, and is dealing with those appropriately so that we can trust in the election and the process today and in the future. We've added new technologies. We need to get more people registered in different ways, and we need to add to voter education. All of those things make us better as a society if the IEC is better.
Tessa Dooms, always so great to speak to you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time.